Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Greater Cleveland Partnerships Lunch and Learn for Thursday, October 8th. My name is Howard Thompson, and our topic today is how IIoT can help you successfully reshore production. We're excited to feature Ectobox and Rimeco as our presenters, and I will let them introduce their organizations as we begin. I want to thank the Alliance for working together and the Ohio Aerospace Institute for their program support. And also thanks to the U.S. Commerce Department, International Trade Administration, and Todd Heiser as today's guest speaker. One of the things that we could do today as we go through the program, if you have questions, you could put those into the question box and we will answer those at the end of the program. Before we begin, I've asked 3 GCP members for a networking introduction, and I would like to begin that with Dan Bannock and Joe Heskey with Warwick Communications.
Hey, thank you, Howard. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning, yes. Thanks for joining. My name is Joe Heskey, and I'm the Director of Business Development and Partner Alliance at Warwick Communications. We're based right outside of Cleveland in Broadview Heights, Ohio. Warwick is an organization that's been helping businesses in technology since 1946. We've been helping companies improve their communication platforms, their overall operations, meeting their needs of their business as that trusted technology advisor. As you can imagine, being around since 1946, we've got thousands of installations and customers. And, we focus from a broad range of types of customers, from the SMB space to enterprise space. And our focus has been in that voice solution IT managed services space. But over the past several years, we've really turned our focus to what we want to do around cybersecurity. We want to make sure that our clients and customers have everything they need, from the technology stack to the education that they need to make sure that their businesses are protected and that their data is safe. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Bannock. He's our Chief Information Officer at Warwick Communications. Take it away, Dan.
Thanks, Joe. As Joe mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Warwick. So I'm responsible for our secure implementation of networks, voice systems, computing with our customers. But more importantly, in the last few years, we've kind of changed, as Joe mentioned, our program to make sure that we're being advocates for cybersecurity risk management. The world over the last 10 years, but it's been evolving over a long time, is it's really turned cybercrime into a global enterprise. It's no longer somebody in their basement just working on their own. There's a supply chain, there are vendors, there's a commercial marketplace associated with cybercrime. And it's not official, it's not legal, but it's definitely out there and it's operating all the time. So basically the message I want to share with the team as we walk through this industrial Internet of Things presentation from our speaker is the dark web's a real place. There's real risks that come from it, and everything that's connected to a network is susceptible to being hacked. So keep in mind, as you move from more standard computing, your phones, your tablets, your computers, that when you connect a webcam or a doorbell cam or a thermostat or any type of automation device to a network, it needs the same type of scrutiny and security consideration that you'd normally put along with your regular computing. Don't leave that out. The Internet of Things is as susceptible to attacks as all types of networks, and hackers don't care what the targets are. It's a profitable business for millions of criminals in the world. And as we connected everybody on the planet over the last 15 or 20 years, it increased the opportunity for crime in those spaces. I'll pass this back to our presenter to introduce our next panelist.
Thank you very much, Joe and Dan. Next, I'd like to introduce Jamie Hart with Rudolph LIBBE.
Thank you, Howard, and good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Hart, Business Development Director for the Rudolph LIBBE Group in Northeast Ohio. Born and raised in Cleveland area, I've been in the construction market for over 30 years, servicing the industrial manufacturing markets. So Rudolph LIBBE is a single source provider of industrial construction and maintenance services. Based in Ohio for over 65 years, we opened an office in Northeast Ohio in 2007. Our office here in Cleveland area is in North Ridgeville. We focus mainly on industrial and manufacturing type projects. So Rudolph LIBBE serves as a construction manager, general contractor. We build new buildings, oversee capital expansions, renovations, and work with new companies expanding into Northeast Ohio, as well as supporting existing manufacturing and when they have a need to expand and grow. We employ highly trained, skilled tradespeople, ensure they're offering quality efficiency, and value engineering. We also have a sister division called GEM Inc. It's a division of Rudolph LIBBE Group. It's part of our Northeast Ohio operation as well. And we focus more on the process and the maintenance side of the business. So once we build the building, we have the capabilities to install the maintenance and process equipment. We work very closely with the owners, the facility managers, the engineers, and help to reduce downtime and create efficiencies within their facility. And we'll talk about that later in the presentation as well. We're unique in the fact that we self-perform all of our services, which enables us to provide one point of contact throughout the process and keep costs to a minimum. In addition, GEM has an energy division. We can offer comprehensive energy solution plans, including improvements in building automation, preventative maintenance plans, HVAC lighting, and energy procurement. GEM is also the 13th largest solar developer in the US. And we offer energy alternatives to local manufacturing. So our team's available to help review financing options, secure energy incentives as well. And that's it in a nutshell. I'll pass it back to you again, Howard.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Jason McLean with ARC Transportation, take it away.
Thanks, Howard. My name is Jason McLean. I'm the Director of Business Development at ARC Transportation. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Really appreciated your time. ARC is a family-owned company. We're headquartered here in Cleveland, actually located right over by the airport. As a company, our mission is to serve as an invaluable supply chain partner through a culture that celebrates excellence in customer service, industry education, problem solving, kind of like that never say no attitude. We work with small to large manufacturers, processing companies, distributors, providing an array of shipping services from freight forwarding, supply chain. A lot of areas we focus on are high priority shipments, international logistics, warehousing, a lot of project work. One of the key metrics that a lot of my customers are focused on these days is OTIF, which stands for on time, in full deliveries. Obviously, delivering your products to the customer on time, in full and damage free is pretty important to any organization's supply chain. One of the reasons I'm really happy to be here today is really because delivering on time and reshoring, pretty much go hand in hand. Whenever I'm reviewing on-time performance with a customer, one of the first things I always ask about is how is their global supply chain network, structured, and how does that impact their delivery? From a logistical perspective, there's a few considerations when discussing, if it makes sense for your company to reshore. First off, helping the environment. For reference, and this is kind of crazy when you think about it, the ocean liners consist of about 3% of all global emissions. So by simply just reducing some of your ocean shipments can kind of help your company reduce their carbon footprint. There's also geopolitical risks, which relates to the politics, international relations, can be influenced by geographical factors, because at the end of the day, the world's pretty unpredictable and ever changing. So again, from a logistical perspective, reshoring can allow your company to mitigate some of those risks commonly associated with global trade, such as unexpected delays and changes in regulations and tariffs and taxes, compliance, all that fun stuff. Also, it's no secret that in some parts of the world, protecting trade secrets can be a challenge. Reshoring kind of allows you to mitigate some of that risk. Or at least, when you partner with somebody, having more communications and being able to adequately make sure your stuff's protected. There's also responsiveness to supply chain capacity. Obviously, having more control over your production, your inventory levels, managing your inventory more closely allows you to have shorter lead times, which helps increase your company's ability to respond more quickly to any unforeseen fluctuations in the market, and also solve quality control issues a little more quicker because you can get stuff back faster, you can rework it, you can then get it back out to your customer. Finally, there's the to customer transaction. One of the key components of meeting a customer's expectations is always, I want to deliver it on time. So most companies tend to actually think that on-time delivery metrics, only always relates to the last mile. And in reality, more times than not, it's not the last mile. It stems further deeper into the supply chain, and how that, you know, if something's not ready, then it can't ship, then it can't deliver on time. So it's all big part of this big puzzle. And having, you know, your materials and products on hand drastically reduces the lead time. And, you know, by reshoring, it allows you to kind of fulfill those orders more quickly, which leads to happier customers, which leads to more business, which leads to good for everybody. On a personal, non-logistical note, I love Cleveland, and, you know, I'm all for reshoring. I think it's great to bring, you know, the economic growth, the jobs, everything, you know, back into the U.S. So if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to me whenever. I'm always happy to help. And thanks again for being here today. I'll turn it back over to you, Howard.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks both to Jamie, Kevin, and Joe and Dan for sharing some of the things that they do as part of their GCP membership. You know, as we move through the program, one of the agencies I think sometimes we overlook, but, you know, from a federal government perspective, has a very great wealth of resources, knowledge, talent, and expertise, is the U.S. Commerce Department and the International Trade Administration. I've had the opportunity of working with Todd Heiser before, and I'd like to introduce Todd as our guest speaker. Todd.
Thanks, Howard, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning, and good morning, everyone. We appreciate the partnership with the Greater Cleveland Partnership. As Howard mentioned, I'm with the U.S. Commercial Service Division of the International Trade Administration from the U.S. Department of Commerce. So how's that for a mouthful to start the morning off? We are a federal agency, and our primary mission is to help U.S. companies grow their business overseas through our network of embassies and consulates around the world in 70+ markets. We also help companies reshore and also support foreign direct investment, and that's what I'm going to talk about here today. Although I'm based here in Northeast Ohio, and our offices cover all of Northern Ohio, basically north of I-70 all the way from Indiana to Pennsylvania. The Select USA program and the Reselect USA program are not geared to one particular state or one particular location. But a little bit more about that program. Since its inception, Select USA has facilitated more than $78 billion, that's with a B, in investment, creating and or retaining over 95,000 U.S. jobs. In 2019 alone, they've helped facilitate over $18.5 billion in investments. We work across the government to help facilitate job creating business investment, raise awareness of the critical role that economic development plays in the U.S. economy. So how do we help? We help companies invest in or expand their investment in the United States by providing information, facilitating direct connections, resolving questions regarding federal regulations and the like. And we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that here this morning. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So some of the services that are available to U.S. companies, again, since we're talking about reshoring today, if you're a U.S. company and are interested in moving manufacturing or service capabilities back to the United States, we can help connect you to state-level economic development organizations, such as here in Northeast Ohio, Team NEO or Greater Cleveland Partnership, those type of groups that can help you with the local lay of the land and what's important. Can also help you find new suppliers via the manufacturer extension partnership centers around the country. But again, here in Ohio, that would be like Magnet. I don't know how many of you may not work with Magnet, but they're also good at helping put together supply chains and connecting you with suppliers if what's important to have a successful business in the local area. Or again, when I'm speaking, please keep in mind it could be in California, Florida, Maine. We have to be equal opportunity folks here as the federal government. We also can provide assistance in navigating the federal system, what type of regulations you might face by moving some of your manufacturing back to the United States, or what programs may be available. Are there federal grants and loans and things like that that may be useful for you? And we can also help you with a lot of different research and counseling on the variety of challenges you may face about bringing your business back to the United States. If you could switch to the next slide, please, David. Some of the things we don't do. We don't help you move your business from Ohio to Indiana or vice versa. We don't get involved with a state-to-state type of thing. We don't help with EB-5 visas or visas to bring foreign workers to the U.S. per se. We can't really do that. We're not in the process of helping you find investment capital. We can't go around to the joint venture capitalists and folks like that to again, preference one over another. And we don't really do mergers and acquisitions. It's all about bringing your businesses back to the United States, or if it's a foreign company investing in the United States, opening a new plant, for example. If you could please switch, David. So some of the things that we can do, we do a lot of customized individual research for your company based on what your needs are. What if it's an international business looking to relocate or a domestic business looking to come back. And you can just see it's a pretty in-depth report. That's just a sample one there, but I'll go on the next slide and tell you a little bit more about some of the specific things that we can help you research. So some of the things that we can access to are you know, things like commercial property and real estate costs, cost of living and doing business, the demographics, what energy may or may not cost, and you can see some of the other lists. But also things like on the macro level, where are there industry clusters? Like here in Northeast Ohio, there's a big industry cluster in the plastics industry, for example. There's medical research all across Northeast Ohio, but there are also, if you include Southern Ohio, there's a lot of aerospace going on in all of Ohio. We're one of the top suppliers to Airbus and things like that. So we can help you find industry clusters if you're in there. And maybe there's a better cluster for you in a different state again. Industry trends, helping you navigate legislation and regulations, a lot of different small business resources, tax rates, trade associations, helping you connect with local transportation and logistics, like one of the partners who just spoke earlier. Even things, wastewater, workforce, what's the average wages in the different states and where might it make sense to involve your manufacturing? And a few things, as I mentioned, like navigating the federal system, helping you connect with, say, the International Development Finance Corporation, the Small Business Administration, Economic Development Administration. There are tons of state and federal organizations available to help business developments, to help you grow it. Because the bottom line for all of this is we're in the business of trying to help create U.S. jobs, whether it's through opening a new factory, bringing in manufacturing back from overseas, growing your business as part of my other job is growing it overseas by helping you find customers overseas. It's all about helping U.S. companies grow and create U.S. jobs. And I think I have one more, David. So I only wanted to spend 5 or so minutes, but there's a ton of great information. I'm sure Howard will share this information with you on the Reselect USA website. There's a lot of databases on federal incentives, but if you're in the local area and you're interested in moving manufacturing back to the US and think that we could be of assistance, my contact information is there as well. I'm based here in Northeast Ohio, so we're happy to help you in that respect as well. You're on mute, Howard.
So let me bounce myself off of mute real quick. And again, thank you for the third time. Appreciate you joining today. And I actually jotted down, you know, you and your team, you know, are very accessible. You have very usable products and you can actually do something with them. So that's it's a great resource to be aware of and in fact to inquire about and build a relationship. Thanks again, Todd. All right, everybody, let's jump into our main program feature. Gives me a great pleasure to introduce Kevin Jones, David Grafton with Ectobox, and also like to present John Ribick with Rimeco as he will chime in and let the program begin. Thanks.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you everybody for attending. We've been really excited about this webinar that Howard had put together. We have a lot of experience around this topic in a few regards, and stories can really help express it. And Dave has a lot of stories, and so does John. So to give you just a tiny bit of background, very brief introduction to who we are and what we do, that'll help set the context for the discussion, and then Dave's going to take it from there. Ectobox is an industrial intelligence solutions company. I'm president, Kevin Jones, and as a company, we provide industrial intelligence solutions companies to manufacturing companies, a lot of manufacturing companies, to help them operate more efficiently on the plant floor within the operational technology environment, and then to help them grow their business. Our solutions typically are enabling companies, manufacturers to solve issues around finding and eliminate inefficiencies on the plant floor, significantly reducing downtime on their machines, preventing machines from being run to failure due to lack of data, or the machine to be able to raise its hand and say, hey, I'm sick, I need a little help. Eliminating paper and spreadsheets that data is typically recorded in for a lot of companies still these days, where that data is trapped and really not available for analysis, and improving job estimates to increase profitability for jobs, and improving schedules to get to help companies deliver more on time. And in the end, we're effectively helping companies to increase production capacity and throughput, which results, of course, in better profits, better revenue, et cetera. A phrase that we use a lot recently, and even having some conversations with some companies yesterday in the Cleveland area, the phrase is that we help companies, manufacturers, do more with what they have. These days, as markets are getting more competitive, regardless of COVID-19, companies need to get more competitive and need to reach deeper into their operations to understand what's going on and give that data to everybody from the shop floor to the top floor. So we're typically implementing industrial Internet of Things, or IIoT solutions, otherwise known as data-driven manufacturing solutions, for manufacturing companies. In those kinds of projects, we are connecting to machines, whether legacy or new and smart, connected to ERP systems and CMS systems, the maintenance systems, getting data from the operators, providing software platforms, and ultimately creating solutions to provide that visibility right down to the factory floor. With that said, hopefully that gives a bit of background for a good deal of the work that we do for manufacturers around the plant floor to help them operate more efficiently. Dave, why don't you take it from here?
Thanks, Kevin. So my name is David Grafton. I'm the COO at Ectobox. Today we're going to talk about, try to answer these three questions. Why reshore? You heard some of that from one of the earlier speakers. And what are some of the risks that you might find when you're reshoring, and how can IIoT help? And so my background that, has kind of led me in this direction is I'm a double E by, my undergrad. I haven't done a lot of hands-on engineering recently, but eventually moved into a quality management role at a pretty large company and became VP of engineering and quality. And, that was a company that did power distribution for data centers. So it kind of gave me a little bit of exposure to both of those industries. Started my career in the semiconductor industry, so it's been a little bit of a journey, but I worked for Eaton in Pittsburgh, the Eaton Electrical Group, for a long time, did 2 separate stints there, but eventually got really involved in operations at my last company, trying to serve customers like Facebook, Twitter, Google, eBay. All those folks were clients, and we were a critical part of their data center build out. And, we were right in the middle of the schedule to, have go live in a data center, right? If the power distribution's not there, you can't bring in the server racks, can't power them up. So, had to get very heavily involved in quality, production test, and a lot of the operation side, including supply chain. And so that's what sort of led me in this direction. And eventually to Ectobox, where I am the COO. And we are, as Kevin said, focused on implementing IIoT. And, John Rimeco is going to be helping me with some parts of this presentation. And John, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your company, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Rimeco from Rimeco Products. I'm the president of the company. We are a family-owned CNC machine shop located in Willoughby, Ohio, and we specialize in parts for the aerospace and defense industries and any other types of components that require the same types of precision and traceability requirements. We also have a work holding division that specializes in quick change mounting solutions for work holding used on CNC machines. We've been using IIoT in the form of machine monitors for about 2.5 years now. We started out with monitors on 4 of our machines, and we now have them on 27 CNC machines. Our goal from the beginning has been to track our uptime, understand our downtime, and gauge efficiency, and also to give our customers a real-time view into how their jobs are running. So that's all I have. Dave, back to you.
Thank you, John. So we're going to start with the first question that was on the introduction slide, which is why would you consider reshoring? And some of these things were covered at a high level previously. Clearly, one of the goals is often to reduce lead times, and even just to make them more predictable. Sometimes it's not just about how fast you are, but it's also about how well you can predict exactly when you will be able to deliver a product. Same thing on cost. Cost certainty is important as much as, lowering costs. So you want to focus on both of those, and by eliminating some of the risks that we'll cover later in the presentation, you can achieve better cost certainty, and that helps you with your pricing efforts and marketing efforts. So IP and trade secret protection, as we all know, there's a lot of places in the world where these things aren't taken as seriously or as rigorously enforced as they are in maybe the United States and Europe. So that may be a critical component of reshoring. Inventory, obviously lowering inventory and increasing turns improves your cash position and makes you more competitive. Better response times for customers and improving quality can be an outcome of reshoring, but that's going to require some investment. It's not just going to happen because you pick up your factory or production or move a supply chain to the United States. You have to actually do some work in order to ensure that you improve quality when you do that. So, few of the risks. Oftentimes, when you're moving production or suppliers, quality can suffer. There's a lot of tribal knowledge, and that's going to change. And so, learning will be needed, and you've got to take steps to mitigate the risk that quality will suffer from a move. So, it's very easy to see how, there's maybe go-no gauges sitting in a factory in, maybe Malaysia or Vietnam or something, and those things may not be documented, right? And so making sure that you're ready for reshoring and ready to implement quality processes needs to be a big consideration in a decision to reshore. With costs have converged somewhat, but you're most likely going to be reshoring from a lower cost environment to a higher cost environment, almost certainly. So, you may not be able to, you're certainly not going to replicate all the labor rates, but the goal should be to make such a move be revenue neutral if possible. Resources, I think oftentimes, I've had this situation with finding skilled trades. Finding CNC operators can be very difficult, more difficult in the US maybe than it is in some of these other countries where they've been doing a lot more production more recently. And so, selecting the right geographic area, as Todd Heiser had noted earlier, finding the right place to put production is also important. You've got to make sure that the right skills are available in that area. And then the regulatory environment is going to change, and it is likely to get more stringent, not less, if you are reshoring something from Asia or South America or somewhere like that. So these are things that need to be considered early so that you can manage them, and should be a component of the decision-making process, not something that is, you deal with after you've made the decision. So starting with lead time. Jason from ARC Transportation had mentioned that there were geopolitical risks and things like that. That's certainly the case. I think everybody that's not living in a cave probably knows there have been tariff war, retaliatory tariffs going each way in every direction, and so that adds cost and unpredictability. And cost and unpredictability is poison for a business. So customs can introduce delays. Shipping, especially from overseas, is subject to disruption. That picture that that's on the screen now is from I believe a longshoreman strike that I remember having an impact in my business, where we could not get parts for a period of time, and we were putting heavy things on airplanes, which isn't a great way to run a business either. And so reducing lead time and taking out some of that unpredictability is really important. And, just in general, there's always going to be more risk. The further you're shipping it, the more international boundaries you cross, there's going to be more risk and uncertainty. And so that's certainly a legitimate reason to reshore. In terms of cost, labor rates in Asia and Eastern Europe, they are increasing. When I first worked with, I think it was Tata in India, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, we were outsourcing some firmware development there. I would say an engineer there cost about 10% of what it did in the United States. And now it's not parity, but it's converged somewhat. So it's not that costs are lower here, but the savings have, based on at least skilled labor, have declined. And I have an example here of an electrical engineer salary in China, approximately $50,000 a year. It's not quite where the United States is, but it's a whole heck of a lot closer than it was back when people were originally making those decisions to offshore production. Again, tariffs, they don't just add unpredictability, they add cost, right? And the cost can be unpredictable. So it's not just about the lead times, but it's also about, how much are you paying for those things? Automation costs are fairly similar across countries. A lot of places that you go are going to use the same equipment. Last year, I was in Malaysia looking at people who were producing office furniture and other things like that. And I was, went down a dirt road into the jungle, and lo and behold, there's a big factory in there with a bunch of equipment from Germany that they were very proud of, because they had automated. So, a lot of folks, it doesn't really matter so much where you are. The equipment for automation is usually the same equipment, or often the same equipment, and the skilled trades, the salaries have converged a bit, and so those costs are more similar than manual labor. In general, the financial incentives have been declining over time, and what you're seeing is folks, again, on that trip that I took to Asia last year, you saw folks who were moving production from China to Malaysia to Vietnam, places like that. So the financial incentives in the traditional places to offshore have been declining over time. IP protection is a big issue. So intellectual property theft is just rampant in many parts of the world. China is, potentially responsible for 2.5% of U.S. GDP versus worth of intellectual property theft, depending on which numbers you believe. That number may be a little high, a little low, but it's certainly a huge number. We are talking billions of dollars, not millions of dollars. Patent protection is generally stronger in the U.S. than in the places you may have offshored production to. And I'm sure that we have all heard stories of people, training their next competitor in, places like China, where the rules forced joint ventures for a long time and things like that. So the patent protection definitely stronger. Trade secrets can be kept a little bit more closely held here in the United States. And, these things matter. They rob you of your competitive advantages over time if they're allowed to go on. So lowering inventory and increasing turn. So local production and supply obviously can reduce the need for safety stock. When you start seeing things happen like tariffs or longshoreman strikes and things that can add time into your supply chain process, you know, one of the easy reactions is to build up safety stock to try to manage those things, but that decreases your turns and increases your holding costs, and that hurts your cash position. And so that's not a great solution and may work in the short run, but it's not the way you want to do business forever, for sure. Reducing the risk of scrap and restocking fees, you know, by lowering inventory, obviously, you lower this risk. You're not building up safety stocks that you may end up not using. And so another way to improve your cash position. And so important to keep inventory low and increase turns, and reshoring can help do that. So responsiveness, custom products tend to generate higher margins and increase customer loyalty. You know, we would all love to be creating, you know, custom products, I think, or maybe not everybody would, but a lot of folks would rather create custom products with those higher margins. But it's hard to do that if you're dependent upon critical customized components from overseas or far away. And you've got all those risks in terms of tariffs and other things in between. So shorter lead times enable better responsiveness without increasing safety stock and reducing your cash. Quality, direct control may enable higher quality outputs. This requires work in order to make that happen. You know, the folks that that may have been building your products or your suppliers' products overseas, they've had time to learn. That travel knowledge has built up. They know how to ensure quality by whatever means they use. And if you move production to the U.S., or you need to be very careful about having that you might generate quality issues. In particular, if your documentation is bad, you know, and you're relying on a lot of travel knowledge. Also, improved communications when you're, you know, when everybody's in the same country and natively speaks the same language, and the communications can just be better, and that can help to reduce risk and improve corrective and preventive actions. It's much easier to manage these issues locally than it is from overseas. So a lot of things that you can consider. Obviously, this is not anything like a complete list, but you know, when you're thinking about whether to reshore production or supply chain, you should be thinking about the total cost of ownership approach for those components that you're reshoring. One thing that you know, I think a lot of folks understand but seems a little bit counterintuitive is high volume standard components that lend themselves to automated processes and the application of skilled resources that might be more available here than overseas. Those are easier to reshore. The capital can offset the increased labor costs. IP and trade secrets, you know, those are competitive advantages, and you can protect them by bringing them home. So if those things are important to your business, the way you build something, not just what you build, might be a good idea to bring it home. And custom components. It's always risky if you rely on overseas suppliers for custom critical components, and the ways that you mitigate that can be expensive. You know, that means potentially additional sets of tooling and things like that. So bringing those a little bit closer to home certainly makes them easier to manage and reduces risk. So how can IoT help with these things? First, production cost. Labor productivity gains are just absolutely necessary if you're going to reshore without adding additional cost to your products. And you know, we're all trying to be cost neutral at a minimum here. So automation is a way to use capital and skilled labor to reduce unskilled labor and offset the increased hourly rates that you would pay for that here in the United States. Reporting, that's tracking downtime. You know, the reasons, if you're going to make those investments in expensive capital equipment and automation, those expensive assets need to be highly productive. And so IoT can help you Pareto these things out and really narrow in on on the reasons for downtime and things like that, and tracking reasons for scrap. By using IoT, you can have shop floor, operator level inputs. What are the reasons for why did we have to scrap something? And you can take corrective and preventive actions and much more quickly and deliver the information to the stakeholders in an automated fashion. And none of this IoT stuff means that traditional methodologies are off the table. Continuous improvement still matters. Applying lean philosophies still matters. And of course, where possible, you want to automate implementation. And I think I would like to ask John Ribbick to please jump in. And I know you've done some of these things. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what Rimeco has done.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I got a few comments on the production cost. First, for us, it's understanding the production costs, and we estimate that through our ERP system anytime we get a new job. So we start out with estimating a cycle time, a setup time, and then as the job runs through the shop, we try to track, is that estimate meeting the actual? Well, what we find is that a day or two after a job's done, we go back and try and figure out, why did this job take 20 minutes per piece when we estimated it at 12 minutes? You start asking questions, and a lot of times you don't get the answers that you're looking for. Was it truly a 12-minute process or a 20-minute process? So the machine monitors really have helped us out in understanding, looking at the machine monitor and seeing that machine was running for 20 minutes. Well, the job was underestimated then, or the job was only running for 10 minutes, but we kept seeing these downtimes in between cycles, and so maybe there was a problem with the operator. So that, first of all, was really allowed us to really see our estimates and really measure our estimates versus the actual, which was important also from a scheduling perspective, because the estimate drives the schedule. And if you estimate a 10-minute cycle times a 300-piece job, and it's supposed to run a week, and all of a sudden it's running a week and a half. So these have really improved with the machine monitors that we're using. Also, with the machine monitors, we label our downtime, and so we track the reasons for the downtime. Was there issues with setup? Was there issues where did the machine stop did it break down? Or so by labeling these and using Pareto charts to look at the reasons for downtime, we were able to correct these issues as they come up. And as far as continuous improvement, we've set up uptime goals, for the entire shop. Our goal is to be up 80% of the time, and that is actual machine running, cutting chips, and that takes into account setups that are going on and combined with production. From a production perspective, our goal is to be up about 95% of the time. And so the machine monitors, by tracking them and having this data, it allows us to get that real-time data and also reward employees that are doing an exceptional job of keeping their machines up, and try to work with the employees that are struggling.
Yeah, so thank you, John. And when Kevin introduced Ectobox, he talked about how this IoT can help improve your estimating process, and hopefully what John just conveyed there kind of explains what we mean by that, which is by better understanding how long it takes to build certain parts, that obviously helps you give better estimates and can improve profitability, right, and improve your pricing, which I think is absolutely critical information. So thank you, John. So why consider IoT? Depending on what your situation is, a lot of people have production saws, CNCs, and you're just going to have a lot of downtime on bottlenecks. A lot of times the data is limited, it's manual, And so what we really need to do is reduce downtime. That increases capacity and production. And obviously that results in improvements to the bottom line, which is what this is all about. Reducing downtime, OEE is something a lot of people are interested in these days. Using IIoT, you can obviously monitor, and I'm a big believer in the old adage that what you can't measure, you can't manage. By monitoring OEE, you can improve OEE. Paretoing reasons for downtime to prioritize your corrective and preventive actions. Sometimes, you can know, you can kind of have an idea anecdotally what some of the problems on your shop floor are, but understanding which one is truly the most important problem to prioritize fixing first, that's something where by Paretoing out that data that you can pull from your shop floor, that allows you to prioritize your efforts. And you can't fix everything all at once, and you want to fix the things that are, when possible, less complex, which is synonymous with less costly, but more impactful, right? So figuring out the right things to work on, not just in terms of there are problems, but what solutions are going to have the most impact on your business. And IIoT will help you do that. And, it's critical to, effectively manage the expensive capital that you're most likely going to need to invest in if you reshore, to offset the higher labor rates. You can't invest in that expensive capital and have it down half the time. It has to be productive all the time. Reducing maintenance costs is a good place to find some savings on your shop floor. There's a sort of a continuum of maintenance. A lot of times, in the past, we've all done preventative maintenance. That's just basically going along with the plan that your manufacturer recommends. At some point, though, you want to be predictive. This is also called conditions-based monitoring. That is reliant on IIoT for real-time information. And what that means is, instead of just saying, think of, if you have a newer car versus maybe some of the cars we would have had, a long time ago, like the 1984 Impala, that was my first car. It used to be you just went, well, the manufacturer says change the oil at this number of miles, so I go do it. And now your car actually monitors the viscosity and other parameters so that you can get more life out of that oil and less downtime on your car. And the same thing applies, for maintenance on your shop floor. If you can do conditions-based monitoring, that's much better than just preventive maintenance. At some point, you may want to move to prescriptive maintenance, which is using IIoT to gather the data, but then also applying AI techniques or machine learning in order to actually help guide solutions to the problems. But I think by improving maintenance techniques, you can reduce downtime, and reducing your downtime will improve OEE, which shows up in the bottom line of your business. This slide is just a way of sort of showing what's the cost of repair. Well, if you end up with a failure being introduced, let's kind of talk about the example of a motor. When a failure is first introduced, maybe the first thing is a little bit of vibration. Eventually the temperature goes up. You can monitor these things, but if you're not, maybe the oil will start to break down. Eventually you'll start to see visible issues. You might smell them burning, things like that. And the further you allow a failure to get, the longer you allow that failure to go, and the more damage it does, the more expensive it is to repair, and the more downtime you're going to have. Kevin and I visited a company just a few weeks ago where they were in a lot of trouble because 2 critical machines were down, and without this type of monitoring, they were not able to predict the failure. The failure happened, catastrophic, and impacting lead times and deliveries to customers. And the turnaround time for the repair was a couple of weeks. So that was a situation where they were going to have to manage that for a couple of weeks. And I'm sure not very happy customers in that case. So IIoT can kind of help you head off these issues before they get too expensive in terms of both cost and lead time. So this is a very similar sort of chart that, again, when the failure starts to occur, the predictive maintenance, you want to identify those things early while the cost to repair is low. And what this chart on the lower left shows is you can see where the vibration on the machine in this particular example was out of normalcy, out of control is what I want to say, and that's an early indicator of a problem. And so by having a monitor like that, monitoring vibration, you can detect the problems early and reduce the impact. And that is a critical component, or one of the big benefits of IIoT if you were to implement it. Another thing that I think is important when you're reshoring, again, going back to the theme of the individual people that you need to hire to manage your business here are probably going to be more expensive than they are overseas. So the more things that you can automate, the better your cost position will be. So enabling access to your system to allow all vendors to plan and restock as necessary without having to send emails and things like that, that reduces transaction costs. You're not paying somebody to do those things, and it reduces delays. So, other things that you can do in terms of vendor management are creating portals if you require PPAP information from vendors, or automating vendor scorecards, and so that you can identify things, issues with particular suppliers early on and start thinking about how you're going to rectify it. Those things being automated and generating the right type of reporting for the critical stakeholders and pushing it to them in a way that they can read and use can definitely reduce transaction costs. One thing to think about here, as the folks from Warwick said earlier, as you do these things and move your move production to the U.S. or more expensive locale, and you start to implement some of this automation, you absolutely want to think about cybersecurity here and make sure that while you implement these things, that you're doing it in a way that protects your business information. So definitely something to think about as you implement these types of processes. Tracking and reducing scrap, clearly something that can be monitored on the shop floor, and reducing and eliminating scrap can have a huge impact on your business, because it's not just about the value of the scrap, although that's important. It's also, when we're all, trying so hard to deliver on time and trying to keep our machines running all the time, there's not a lot of room to build things twice, right? So reducing scrap not only reduces cost, it also can improve lead time if you're scrapping parts because of quality issues. And so, again, by being able to monitor those things from the shop floor, put them into a readable format for all of the stakeholders. One of the things that we see a lot when we're talking to folks is, we'll hear, well, we have all this data, we just can't see it. We can't see it in the right format. We're not getting anything out of it. So, one of the things that IIoT can certainly do for you is to ensure that not only are you collecting the right data, you're putting it in a usable format and getting it to the decision makers that need it at the right time in a way that enables quick data-driven decision making. And that will reduce your costs. That you're of course going to be concerned about as you reshore. Reducing the cost of quality. So there are a couple categories of cost of quality. Prevention costs, that's the sort of your QA system, the systems and processes that you use to try to prevent quality issues in the first place. Appraisal costs, that's all your digital monitoring systems, measurement systems, testing, production testers, things like that. internal failure costs, as the scrap, material component losses, things like that. External failure costs are returns, recalls, and that's certainly the place we want to make sure we stay out of. And, you know, I'll also just kind of quickly remind, you know, when you move, you know, even if you've moved production from one facility to another domestically, you can generate quality issues, let alone when you're bringing it back from overseas. There's definitely a much higher risk that some information will be lost in the move. So, prevention costs, you know, there's a lot of ways to reduce this, the cost of preventing quality issues. But the big thing that IoT is going to help you with, I mean, first of all, you have to be ready for this. You have to be ready. The culture has to be right. You have to have a data-driven culture and good leadership in order to go down this route. If your organization's not ready, then that's step one, is get ready. But the big thing for IoT is it's going to get you the data you need, and only the data you need. That's that sort of, you know, data tsunami that a lot of people have coming at them, and boy, all the data's there somewhere that I need to manage my business, but I can't quite pull it out and get it in the format that I want. So IoT can help structure the data and format it, and again, get it to the right people at the right time in the right way so that they can actually use it in a timely manner. You know, getting connected, bridging the IT-OT gap. We talk a lot about this when we're on the road. There's a lot of information oftentimes out there on the shop floor that never makes it over to the office space. And integrating those systems, it makes it all that data much, much more valuable. And it has to be scalable. And that's one of the things that IoT brings. You know, most processes can be defined on a piece of paper, or maybe even run on a piece of paper for a small enough operation, but that's not scalable. You know, and so IoT can help make it scalable. And again, leading to drive the culture is going to be important. Appraisal costs. You know, this is the testing. You know, hopefully we want to reduce cost at this stage in general. We mostly would, of course, prefer to prevent quality issues rather than test them out of the process. So a couple of things that can help here are integrating the data with the ERP, integrating the data, again, think about what I had said earlier, bridging that IT-OT divide. Integrating the data with the ERP system will multiply the effectiveness of the data, getting it to the key stakeholders quickly in the right format so that they can make decisions. And this is not just going to result in better quality, but also shorter lead times as well. So, and you know, one of the critical things is, again, by bridging that divide, you can provide better feedback loops. You know, your design team can find out exactly how their design choices may be impacting production. Because they get to see that data, but only the data they need, and that's part of the power of IT. I did want to ask John. John was going to talk a little bit about the cost of quality and how the IoT implementation at his place have impacted this. John?
Thanks, Dave. The one thing that I've always been told is the way to understand cost or fix a process is by measuring it. So that's what we're doing with the monitors. The cost of quality, cost of QC is expensive. It's an expensive part of our you know, overhead, and so we want to get the most out of it. So by measuring downtime and understanding how much downtime is being caused by setup, and then setup inspection, and then being able to allocate resources to fixing those problems, you know, buying automated equipment, automated inspection equipment, MMs, and scan machines, and then also using our inspectors moving around and having them on different shifts so that they can help out in different areas. So that's really what the monitors, and by measuring these things, has allowed us to do.
Thanks, John. And yeah, by not just saying, yes, we've had quality problems, IoT can actually help you put a dollar value on those quality problems. And again, going back to, one of the themes from an earlier slide, by putting a dollar value on it, that allows you to prioritize, right? You may have a quality issue that you hear about from people from time to time, and you would think that that was the thing you need to fix. But if you're actually monitoring not only the quality issues, but how much those quality issues are costing your business, that's where you can then prioritize the cost of those corrective and preventive actions. Sure. Internal quality costs. Tracking the reasons for scrap and, to mitigate or eliminate the root causes, providing feedback to the design team, and again, getting that more timely, quicker feedback to the critical stakeholders, and being scalable is, of course, highly important. So, the total cost of quality includes all these things. It's the prevention costs, it is the failure costs, it is the cost of scrap, and one of the things, there are diminishing returns sometimes. Getting to zero defects sometimes might be cost prohibitive, and you kind of want to figure out what that optimal quality level is, where to help you understand where to spend on prevention of quality issues. External failure costs, I think this is a very familiar chart to most people. As you get further along in the process, the failures are just much more expensive. And, when they occur, you want a system that will deliver the appropriate information to the right resource in a timely manner, and IIoT can help you do this. You can also even convey information to your customers about the status of quality issues. We did this at my last place of business, where we integrated some of the quality information with our CRM, so that salespeople weren't surprised if they showed up at a customer site and there had been a quality issue there and they weren't aware of it, right? So making sure that you push that information out to the right people so that they can use that to do their jobs. And you definitely want to stay away from that field failure cost. That's that bottom of the pyramid where it's 100 times more expensive. When you can do things up front, and that's where what IoT is going to help you do, when you can find those things early, they're much less expensive to solve. So is it valuable? Of course, we think it is. IoT, I think, is valuable and will, with some upfront investment, help you reduce your overall cost, improve quality, and improve on-time delivery. These are just some numbers from, let's just say, a typical project that we might do. Often we can see a 10 to 60% increase in throughput, reducing downtime by 30 to 80%, eliminating a ton of scrap, improving cycle times by up to 70%. And, the solutions actually are not that costly, and the payback period is usually very fast on these things. So we absolutely think it's valuable. And, if you can get a 10% improvement in OEE, you're going to increase your profit dramatically. So I think these are, this is what makes it valuable, right? When you see it in this format, you can really see the power of it and what the impact can be by reducing downtime and improving OEE. This is an example of a project that we did. 10 machines, over the course of a year. And, from an initial starting point of about a couple $1 million, saving $633,000 by reducing downtime by 25%, reducing scrap by 25%, and increasing production. The resulting increase in production was about 17%. And the savings that resulted in that, $633,000, that's about 25% savings from before the IIoT solution was implemented. So, these numbers aren't, pie in the sky. These are numbers that are achievable, and I don't want to say easily achievable, but regularly achievable, predictably achievable by implementing IIoT. And that was the last slide. I think John was going to, well, except with the exception of John's slide here, where John's going to talk a little bit about, what the financial impact of some of this stuff has been for his company.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. As far as the machine monitors we're using, we saw definitely an increase in efficiency from the time we started using it, and it's constantly improving. We're always looking at ways to use these to improve what we're doing. If you notice in the right-hand corner of this slide, we won the an award for the Modern Machine Shop Top Shops this year. They do a survey every year of about, everyone that reads Modern Machine Shop, and I think they get about 500 entries. And so we were one of the top 4, and we won for business strategy and operations. And a lot of that's attributable to our goal of achieving a 100% production rate, 100% efficiency. We feel that if we can be, use things like IIoT and automation to show prospective customers that are possibly looking to reshore some of their manufacturing, that they can get the best cost and they can have the reliability and look right into how a manufacturing plant is running, see the uptime, and know that their parts are going to be on time. It's going to be really valuable for us. So I really appreciate being part of the presentation here.
Well, we appreciate having you, John. And I spent some time in John's shop. There's boards up all over the place. People can see how they're doing, and it is a shop that is hopping. You don't see idle people or idle machines in that shop, and I think a lot of that, stems from their commitment to implementing IIoT and having those insights into what's going on at any moment on their shop floor. And so, I think they've done a great job there, and you can tell as soon as you walk out on the shop floor that they've done a great job. Everything's in motion. Everything's in motion all the time, and that was great to see. So, thank you, John. And that is the end of the presentation for today. So if there are any questions, feel free to go ahead and, I think, Howard, you wanted those in the chat, correct?
Sure, and a couple of them are coming in, so I'll read them and just say who some. I've got a couple for the Commerce Department. I'm going to redirect those to Todd so he can answer those after, because I know he had to drop off for another meeting. But those relate to Commerce Department charges for their services, and from what I know,
here, Howard. I have a couple more minutes if you want me to go for it.
Yeah, good. Well, let me ask you. Direct this to you. How much does the Commerce Department charge for their services?
Nothing for the Select USA services. So if you're looking at reshoring options and things like that, it's paid out of the federal budget. So there's no charges at all for those research reports and things that we do. So no cost at all, if that's what they're asking about.
That's great. Thank you. A couple more coming in. Congratulations to John on the Modern Machine Shop Award. And then the follow-up question there was, how did your employees relate to IIoT when you were first bringing it on board? And was it a positive implementation? Was it difficult? How did you go about that process?
We started it slowly with just bringing on a few machines to get started, and really trying to explain to everybody this wasn't to to just push people harder and harder. It was really to understand what our problems were and understand our estimates a little bit better. Is it the estimate was done improperly, or is it we need to just run this process a little more efficiently and just help them out with it? So I really don't think we've had any issues. We definitely didn't, there was no pushback from any of the employees on it, and really they started to use it and they start to like it and see like, wow, look what I'm running today. I'm at 90, I'm at 95%. Some people are even at 100%. They're helping each other out during their breaks to keep the machine running. It's a lot of pride.
That's pretty good. And I guess that goes back to the other question, was how important is training and employee involvement? It just sounds like this is a comprehensive approach to, you know, a little bit maybe of a culture shock at first, but it sounds like employees start to adapt to it pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
that can be directed at John and then the other two guys as you've seen this implemented in other facilities.
I think for us, I mean, you wouldn't want to just have your employees show up on Monday and all of a sudden you got a bunch of machine monitors checking things out. I think you want to, you know, introduce it, explain it, have meetings and discuss what you're trying to do. The goal is always to improve growth of your company, and that pays dividends to everybody, including the employees.
David and Kevin, your reaction to that and what you've seen with other.
I'd say, you know, I talked a little bit about being ready culturally, right? So, you know, some of this is preparing the ground for it before you do it, making sure employees, you know, John mentioned, you know, it was clear to his employees, we aren't doing this. This isn't us just trying to watch you. And, you know, this isn't, you know, we're not trying to do it for bad reasons. The point of this is to make us a more efficient company. So we're all doing better, right? And so it's really a change management activity. And that's, you know, preparing the ground first and having your leadership explaining those things before you try to implement them is absolutely critical. And also making sure that it's a team effort. You know, you want your leadership team and some critical folks and bring in some shop floor people to help define what this looks like, right? Don't just give it to them as a finished thing. Get them engaged and they will buy into it, but engage them early. That's what I think.
That's a good point. I'll add another point too. Dave's already stolen part of my thunder, which was the phrase change management. That's a big piece of it. Being aware of it, managing it at the very beginning is really important. Around the idea of stories, there's a situation we weren't involved with it, but another situation which I kind of debate on whether it was a good situation or not. Another company, another part of the country had implemented IoT, and what happened was that the owner or president of the company implemented it secretly on the machines and was watching some of the operators then at that point. And it wasn't as much a big brother as he wanted to get a true baseline without the noise of, oh, I'm being watched, I better, you know, change my habits. Rather, he wanted to find out how they were really acting initially. And again, I debate that approach, but then what happened was he eventually started to share that data on big screens across the plant floor. And it turned out there's one particular operator that thought that he was doing the right thing. When he'd come on the shift, he would prepare this and do that. And it would take him a while to get up to speed to be able to reach the production rate that was required to then meet his goal for the day. And it was pretty clear to everybody on the big boards above the, you know, in the cells and the operational areas that operator was not really meeting the goals that were established. And once somebody had let's call it a coaching moment with that operator, it was apparently a very positive situation. They eventually, that operator realized, holy cow, all this activity I'm doing is not really valuable. And so that accountability aspect of it was really, really important. Operators can see what they're doing and they generally want to get better. But the change management process that leader went through, I'm not quite sure how good that was, but regardless, they got the right results in the end. But really, if our perspective is more open, transparent change management, that phrase that Dave used was really helpful.
Right, that's a good one. It's not really lighting a fire underneath you, but the change management. Yes. That's a great approach. You know, another question, really in for I think Kevin, David, however you guys want to do it. How do you plan for a capital investment in IIoT? What's the I mean, aside from the culture, what's the finance aspect of it moving forward?
Kevin, why don't you want to take that one on
Sure,
the finance
sure.
piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a number of ways to tackle that kind of question, and probably not enough time to dig into it. But the basic idea is, regardless of finances, just when we start to talk with a company about what's going on, and it becomes clear that they have some challenges they want to solve, we start the conversation with, where's the business at? Where does it want to go? Identify that gap between where you're at, where you want to go. And for that gap, then what kind of challenges do you have that need to be covered to help you get from here to there? And then there's a bunch of other conversations and several points we go through in a process we call our Digital 360 process, which helps us arrive at a roadmap for what needs to be put in place to solve those challenges. And then at that point, we generally suggest, especially because, again, coming back to this change management idea, these are new ideas, exactly what the approach that John took, just a couple machines, let's start off small. So we will look at those challenges, find the least complex, most viable challenges to start solving, and assuming that everybody agrees on both sides, then at that point, we will start to put together estimates for doing the pilot project, a couple machines, and let's plan out how long we're going to look at that data, how we're going to work with you to help with the data awareness and data-driven aspects, developing that culture in your company. And then from there, we'll start to scale up the solution. But from the CapEx side of things, a few considerations, or a couple at least considerations. One of the things that we can do early on is say, okay, well, if you eventually want to connect all these other machines you have in your plant, we've done this so many times, we know what it's going to take. So we can estimate that early on. And then we can work with you to plan out the cash flow and how you want to spend that money. And then there are also a variety of ways that we have and companies on their own have to manage that cash flow too. And some of the work that we do can be more of an income statement, an expense, put it on the credit card kind of thing, if that's appropriate, versus a larger upfront capital expenditure. And I'd also suggest, and open to individual conversations after this, I'd also suggest that it might be true that the numbers you might be guessing for putting IIoT solutions in place probably aren't as big and massive as many people might think they are. If you take the right approach, work incrementally, plan through things correctly, pilot projects and whatnot, the expenses, the capital expenditures are not that big, number one, and number two, even for pilot projects, let alone other kinds of projects, we can get some really interesting, very fast returns on that work because that work can be so impactful, and also because we've planned to focus on the viable challenges. Getting a return within 3 months is not unheard of. It's actually fairly common for us, and so there's a number of variables to consider, but it can all be handled. And it's just a matter of just kind of digging down to the details for your specific situation. Dave, did you have any additional thoughts?
I don't know if they're additional, maybe saying a few things slightly differently, which is, when we first start working with somebody, we identify the business problem they're trying to solve first before we go in and say, stick a sensor on this machine, right? Because we want to, I talked a lot through the presentation about, how IoT can help you prioritize things, right? But we actually do that as a preliminary step to say, let's try to, map out the processes, see where, the goal is, right? And focus on targeting those areas first where we know there will be a return, right? If we've done the right analysis up front, what we don't want to do is kind of go in with a shotgun approach and say, well, let's just monitor all the machines and see what we find, right? What we want to do is say, okay, what's the business problem you're trying to solve? We will figure out the right data you need to solve that problem, and then we're going to do the IoT solution around that, not force the IoT solution. Understand the business problem first, and then you're kind of guaranteed those returns that Kevin's talking about.
That's great information, guys. Thank you very much. That's really the only questions that came in for right now. We'll still accept questions anytime after the webinar, you could forward those to me aththompson@gcpartnership.com. I'd be happy to bring in any of the resources that we had available today. I want to thank all of my guests today and the sponsoring organizations, OAI and the Alliance, for working together. I think this was a really, really great opportunity to really showcase some of the opportunities out there. And I really liked what Kevin said at the beginning. You do more with what you have. And I think with so many vast resources that we have available, and we talked about this at the Greater Cleveland Partnership early on and back in March, and we came up with resources through our gcpingear.com website that you can access resources, you could chat with team members there, you can ask for assistance in various membership categories, energy categories, business development categories. So there's a lot out there for people to access. I hope people take advantage of everything that we have available. Thank you guys again. I hope everybody has a great day and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you, everybody else. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yep. Thanks, Howard. Thanks,
Everyone.
everybody.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
everyone.
day.
Appreciate you.
Bye for now.
Thanks.